The Confidence Doc podcast is brought to you by My Evergreen Med Spa. Located in Houston in the Woodlands, My Evergreen Med Spa brings to you the latest aesthetic treatments in the most luxurious environment. Remember, My Evergreen Med Spa, it's me time elevated.
Welcome to a space where beauty meets authenticity and transformation is not just a possibility, but a promise. I'm absolutely thrilled to introduce you to someone truly special, Dr. Rukmini Vinaya Rednam, the compassionate force behind the countless remarkable transformations in the vibrant city of Houston, Texas. Picture this: every curve, every contour crafted with care and expertise. Not just by a board-certified plastic surgeon, but your very own cheerleader for self-discovery and confidence. Get ready to embark on a journey where we explore the art of science of feeling your very best self. This isn't just a podcast. It's your cozy corner of empowerment and inspiration. So pull up a chair, pour yourself a cup of kindness, and let's dive into the Confidence Doc podcast with Dr. Rukmini Vinaya Rednam.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Confidence Doc podcast. I'm Dr. Vinaya Rednam. I'm a board-certified plastic surgeon in Houston, Texas. And today on our episode, we have Dr. Anita Kulkarni, and she is a plastic surgeon in the D.C. area. So please welcome her to the show.
Thanks.
So tell our listeners a little bit about yourselves.
Okay. Well, I grew up in New Jersey, and my dad was in international business. So we moved to Korea for a while, and I went to elementary school in Seoul. And then we came back to New Jersey, and then I went to Northwestern. I went to University of Chicago for medical school. I did my plastic surgery training at Michigan, and then I did a cancer reconstruction fellowship at Memorial Sloan Kettering. And after finishing my fellowship, my husband took a job at Georgetown. He's a transplant hepatologist. And so we knew we were coming to the DC area. So I joined a group of 3 other surgeons. So there were 4 of us total in Bethesda. I was there for about 5 years. And then I decided to start my own practice, which is where I am now. The practice is DC Plastic Surgery Boutique. And our mission is that we are for women by women, which I know will resonate with you. All of our staff are women. All of our patients are women. And we serve this very specific kind of niche community. And it's been amazing. It's been almost 6 years, almost 7 years I've been doing that. And it's been a really fun journey, learning both about running my own practice as a business owner, being able to serve the women in my community, and kind of building this concept that ended up being, really resonant with the people around me.
Well, I love that. I love that, for women by women.
Yeah.
What inspired you to become a plastic surgeon? Everybody's kind of got their story that led them down this path. So what took you down this path?
So I knew I wanted to have a predominantly female patient population. I knew I wanted to take care of women. I thought about OBGYN, and when the summer between my first and second year of medical school, I worked in a plastic surgery lab at NYU, doing it was basic science research, but they were doing microsurgery on mice, on rats. And that was the first time that I felt really blown away by the technical aspects of surgery, like what's possible. And I was watching these fellows and residents and attendings do this microsurgery on rats, and they're under the scope and they're sewing together these tiny blood vessels. And I just was so impressed. And I thought, well, that looks like something really cool. And then as I went through medical school, it kind of ended up marrying the 2 things that I really wanted, which was I wanted to take care of a female patient population. And then I had this thing that I found that was so technically interesting, which was microsurgery. And I did end up doing a microsurgery fellowship. I don't do as much microsurgery anymore, but that's kind of what led me down the road. So I actually went into plastic surgery to take care of breast cancer patients. And I did my fellowship in cancer reconstruction, and, did a bunch of microsurgery for the first few years of my practice. So yeah, that's really what drew me to it.
So what is it about? So you said you really, sounds like it from an early time, you're really drawn to wanting to be able to take care of women. So why? Like, what drew you towards that?
I'm such a girl's girl. I always have been. Since I was a kid, I've always had a group of female friends. To this day, I always have groups of female friends. and it's something I've always enjoyed. I was in a sorority in college, and I I know about myself that I always knew about myself that that's something that would make me happy in the long run. And there's nothing wrong with taking care of male patients. Lots of people do it, but the way my practice works now is that I take care of all of these women who, in another situation, could have been my friends, and it makes my practice, it makes my clinic really fun. The crossover between my friends and my patients is pretty fluid, like friends become patients and patients become friends all the time. And that makes the job fun. And so I always knew that about myself, and the practice that I ended up building sort of reflects that core value of mine. And as I've gotten more successful through time, I've really tried to channel some of that mission into other ways to help women that aren't as far along as I am. So last summer, I started this networking group called DC Female Business Owners Networking Group. And initially, I had just put this call out on social media saying, like, hey, like, other female business owners in DC, are you interested in networking? And the response was just tremendous. I mean, unbelievable, pouring in of responses. And so then I just started this Google contact form. I mean, it was all very ground up. Started this Google contact form, and I said, if you're a woman and you own a business in DC, and it's not medical, not surgical, just any business, sign up, and then we'll see what we can do about putting together some events, because at the time when I got interested in that, I'd done a bit of a deep dive into women who own businesses. And um, there's all these statistics on how like 50 something percent of businesses are owned by women in the US, or more, 60%. But though all those businesses together generate like less than 10% of the revenue of like global revenue. Yeah. And there are a number of factors, but probably the main one is that women tend to own businesses that are lower dollar value. So women tend to own, nail salons and hair salons and childcare facilities. So the revenue is not there. And then for the women that are building these bigger businesses, there are all these barriers. There's a lack of access to networking. There's a lack of access to capital. And so those are the kinds of things that on a ground level, I wanted to see if I could do something about. I can't solve every problem. I can't make, maternity leave universal, right? But I can create a community of business owners that can share their struggles and can make entrepreneurship a little less lonely. So I started that in the summer of 2023. We started doing these quarterly events, and each event would be focused on something that a woman who runs a business would need help with, like marketing, for example. Or we had one where we had a panel with a small business accountant, a small business attorney, and a small business consultant. And they each gave their like top 10 tips I would give to, business owners, and answered questions. This year so it started growing. We're doing these quarterly events, and I tried to keep the number of attendees around like smaller so that it was a little more authentic. So around like 30 women at each event. And I find that if you have an event with 100 people, you just end up gravitating towards the people right? But if you have an event with 30 people, there's a real likelihood that you'll connect with somebody that you wouldn't have otherwise connected with. So we started doing these quarterly events, and they got very popular, and the list grew, and the list has a couple hundred business owners on it, and the events are still going on. And so this year in 2025, I finally put together a small board for it with a few other people who can help, put together and promote the events. So our next one in the summer, our next one is in the spring, and that one is a woman who built her business and then sold it to Utz, the potato chip company.
Yeah.
And then in the summer, Susan Tynan from Framebridge is going to come and talk to the female entrepreneurs. She's about her whole journey, like how she started, how she got serious funding, how she ended up building this national, I don't know if you've heard of Framebridge, but it's a big deal around here. So that has been a really cool passion project. Nobody makes any money off of this, but it's just a great way for me to be able to channel that same energy into something that's beneficial to other women.
Well, it's clear, like just hearing you talk, that you're like very like inspired and energetic about the business aspect of what you do, not just the the surgical aspect of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think you kind of have to be. Being a solo practitioner is a little bit trial by fire, right? You start this business and you have no idea what you're doing because nobody told you anything. And the first year, you get totally overwhelmed by all the bookkeeping and the taxes and the, every ordering gauze. Like it's like death by a thousand paper cuts. And I think you have to force yourself to be good at this, just like you forced yourself to be a great plastic surgeon. You know what I mean? Like there's a learning curve to everything, and this running a business is no different. So exactly what the sentiment you're echoing is that part of the reason I created this networking group is to make those transitions a little bit easier for someone else. You know what I mean? So you don't have to reinvent the wheel every single time.
And that's one of the things that I really love, especially like you see this a lot with women in surgery in general, is that we are always trying to mentor and network and help others because it's always been more of a challenge for us than our male counterparts. That's just
Right.
how it is, right?
Right.
And I feel like that's been a recurring theme, no matter what society or group you're in. It's just that people want to help you; they want to help you succeed.
Yes, absolutely. And it's so different than even when I graduated from medical school in 2006, and then I was a resident until 2012. And when I started my residency, there were 4 women total in the program. It was the integrated program at Michigan. There were 4 women total out of a program of, whatever it was, 20 something people. And the 4 of us formed this little society called WIPS, which was the Women in Plastic Surgery. And we had, we would get together and we would kind of try to support each other. And last I checked, the program is now more than half women. So it's just the whole landscape has changed, and when we were coming through there, I feel like that transition was just happening where there was a subset of surgeons that were older that had been just abused and destroyed by the system. And they didn't necessarily want to be helpful to younger surgeons. And then there was this younger demographic of, the younger attendings when I was a resident, 15, 20 years ago, who wanted to change that, who wanted to be different. And now I feel like the pendulum is totally swung the other way, where it's exactly what you said. In any professional setting I come into, the women in the room want to help the other women in the room. Now, I don't know if that's universal or if that's just because these are the rooms that I choose to put myself in, but I totally agree. I think we have seen a seismic shift in the way that women treat each other in the business and medicine world.
Absolutely. I mean, and I was like you, like I graduated residency in 2014, and like it was the same thing. I had like, one female attending who worked so hard. And I remember her telling me that she used to find the other female resident in her general surgery years, and they would go into a stairwell and cry once a week together. She's like, we would just hold each other and cry.
Oh,
and then we would wipe our faces off and get back to work. And like we laugh, but I mean, like I think we've all been in that situation where you're like, oh my gosh, I just need another woman to commiserate with me.
Exactly. And that's exactly what the WIPS was, and it was everything from the topics of conversation in the operating room. When I was a resident, everyone else in the room was a man. And so and not that men and women I don't want to generalize and say that no women are interested in sports or no men are interested in whatever else. But I'm not really that interested in sports. And so it was a lot of standing around in operating rooms, like not really having anything to say or not having any way to connect. And that has, humans are naturally connectors. Humans want to feel connected to each other. And when you're in a situation where you're unable to connect with the other people in the room, that actually has ramifications for the things that you get to be allowed to do and for the responsibilities that that you get and how valuable somebody sees you as a member of the team. Some of that depends on how much they like you, and how much they like you depends on how much they connect with you. And that's where that being the only woman in the room was always really hard.
Well, it's also, like I remember my attendings inviting like my male counterparts out to go golf or do something. And it technically was it appropriate to invite me by myself to go do that.
Right.
And so I get it. And it wasn't because I totally felt like my attendings respected me, things like that. But I didn't have that. And so now building up networks of female, like business women and surgeons, I feel like I'm able to have those type of things now. And it's not like something that I have to be like, oh, is it appropriate or not for me to be hanging out with them,
Right. And I've noticed, I looked through some of your old podcasts and I've noticed that you've had several female plastic surgeons on. And I think that's just awesome. I mean, it's such a reflection of how collaboration over competition. There's the whole mentality that we've shifted into, which I think is great, where we are trying intentionally to build each other up. And I think that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Well, and a lot of our listeners don't know this, or the general public, that even though 98% of people who get plastic surgery are women, only 17% of board certified plastic surgeons are women,
Totally.
which just seems a
It's
little
wild.
crazy,
It's
and
Yes. Yes.
and we're not
And
saying anything bad about our male counterparts. They take really good care of their patients, but
yes.
it just seems very odd that many women are the patients, but so few women are actually taking care of them.
Right, right. And it's actually, you don't see that in fields like OBGYN, where it's majority women physicians and majority female patients. It's specifically in plastic surgery. Or you don't see it in dermatology either. Dermatology is, it's very specifically in plastic surgery.
But we were 16% before, so we're moving on.
Slowly up, yeah. We were probably 10% when we were in residency.
I actually just got back from the Women in Plastic Surgery meeting. It was in
Awesome.
Boston, and what I love about that meeting that I get is just that every year it gets bigger and bigger,
Yeah.
and more people come, and now you get residents and medical students are coming, and I just think, man, I wish I had that when I was going through it, because I felt
Totally.
like I didn't really have like this big group of women to look up to.
Right. No, 100%. I mean, and I also think social media has changed that landscape a little bit too, because social media wasn't even around when we were residents, and when it first came out, it was, especially from an academic program, it was sort of taboo. Like, you really shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't be having yourself on Instagram. And I think that in the same way that social media has made plastic surgery more transparent for patients, it has allowed women who are younger medical students, residents, to see this entire cadre of female plastic surgeons who have these great Instagram accounts, who are out there, like, not just doing surgery, but living your life, right? Like, it's really inspiring for younger women to see middle-aged women, which we are now, to see middle-aged women, having a career, having a family, making it work, making it balance, like being honest about the struggles. I think that kind of mentorship, even from a watch perspective, not even just from a, like, you don't know the person personally, but you're watching them, and you can see yourself in that person, and you can see yourself in those struggles and in that life. And that's just so important, because the old phrase, you can't be what you can't see, right? Like,
Exactly.
you have to see, and you have to see minority women doing it, and you have to see people that look like you making this progress. And another thing that I talk very openly about is how much success I've had, because I think one of the things that we're taught as women is to minimize ourselves, and to not seem showy or arrogant or whatever. And men never get told that, and, like,
No.
young women need to see a woman who's, like, just killing it, and they need to see that, because then they know that they can be that too.
Well, it's interesting. I recently heard like a medical student who was, interviewing and for residency, and she said that she was advised by some of her attendings, like, don't smile so much,
Oh.
don't talk so much. I think you probably went through this where they told me what I should wear so I get taken
Yeah.
seriously, not to. And now I love being on the other end of it. If I'm going to speak at something, I'm gonna wear whatever I want to
Whatever
wear.
you want. Yeah, you
I
want to
like
wear a mini dress and some high heels, you wear a mini
Exactly.
dress.
I wear some
Who's gonna stop
stilettos,
you?
bright colors.
I
My
love it.
hair can be totally all curled huge. I
I
mean,
love it.
I don't care, because how I appear isn't like like directly relate to what's inside my brain and the
Correct.
quality of it,
That's
And
right.
I like being able to be seen as like, hey, guess what? You don't have to wear a boring suit and a pearl necklace
Right.
and to be taken seriously.
Right. Totally. Yeah, 100%. And the more that younger women see that, and the more that men in the audience see you doing that, with each step of that, it becomes like a little bit less stigmatized, right? Like, it becomes like, okay, well, she's giving a great talk and she's dressed like that. And now that even those old male surgeons, now they've seen it once, and then it happens again. Now they've seen it twice. And then over time, that sort of stigma of having to wear and look, if you're a medical student and you're going to a national meeting, yes, you're going to have to dress conservatively. It's not your time yet, girl. It's going to be someday. It's just not your time yet. But just being able to see it and change the aesthetic of it, I think over time changes people's minds about it.
I agree. I agree. And that kind of brings me to something that you had shared with, when you kind of shared like topics, is that you really like to focus on the fact that women's bodies are not a trend,
Correct.
right? So talk a little bit more about that, because we do in plastic surgery talk a lot about
About
the
trends.
trend this year.
Yes.
This is what's going on. And so
And
what's your take on that?
it has been all over the media, even in the last, since January 1, it's been like all over the media that, I'll give you a specific example, that yoga boobs are in. I don't know if you've seen this at all, but it
Ballet
was
boobs, yoga boobs.
ballet
Yeah.
boobs, yoga boobs. Okay. And let me tell you what that implies. And what they mean by yoga boobs are in is a smaller, more natural breast implant, right? Like that's the translation. But what it implies is that a yoga body is a skinny, probably white woman who wants a small who wants a small breast implant. And it completely negates the fact that yoga is not body type restricted. Like anybody can do yoga. So you don't get to assign yoga boobs to a yoga body, and because you're already marginalizing a whole community of women who do yoga and don't have that body. And then the second thing I really hate about describing trends is that all you can give a woman, all you can give a person as a plastic surgeon is the best version of themselves. There is no other, surgery is not magic. You and I both know that it's surgery, it's not magic. You cannot take somebody with a particular body type and turn them into somebody with a different body type. So when you tell somebody that yoga boobs are in, for every woman in the country who doesn't fit that particular aesthetic that you're describing as in, well, what now? Her body's out? Like she's not, that like her body is no longer okay. So I find the idea of, assigning trends. Now you can say things like, the most popular procedure in plastic surgery last year was X, was liposuction, was breast augmentation. Those are just facts. Like, yes, we can say in 2025, we are seeing that patients are having more breast augmentation than they had in 2024. That's okay. That's a fact. But you cannot assign a particular body type and decide that that body type is the trend of the year, because you're setting up a standard that, frankly, the vast majority of the populace cannot achieve.
Yeah. Well, also, I mean, like, I always tell people, like, I dress for myself, right? I don't care what the trend is for dressing. If I like it, I'm going to wear it, right? So if we're going to do that with clothes and say, hey, dress the way you want, like, how are we suddenly then telling people, because you can't suddenly, like you said, just change your body? Is that even a healthy
Right.
thing to do? Oh, well,
Absolutely
this
not.
year my butt's going to be big. Next year I'm going to make it a little smaller.
Right. Right.
No, of course not.
Yeah, and I mean, I really dislike the Kardashians. I'm just gonna come out and say it. I really dislike them, and the reason that I really dislike them is because they won't publicly cop to all of the things that they're doing that are resulting in these unattainable bodies. They're presenting an incredibly unattainable standard. Like, I don't know them. I don't know what they've had done. I think there's been a lot of fat transfer from place to place on all of their bodies. I think that there's probably been some rib removal or rib remodeling. And they've created this aesthetic that, again, is like unattainable for the vast majority of people. And while on the one hand, you could say, well, that's a patient and they have their privacy and that's fine, you can't present your body as an ideal and have all of these young girls looking up to them and not at least admit that this is not your natural body, that you've done something to get there, because then you're setting up a whole generation of girls for body self-loathing, which is, it's so antithetical to all of the things that I try so hard to do in my practice. Like, part of being for women by women, it's not just our slogan. When we say that, we mean that, like, we believe in this woman's journey. We want this woman's plastic surgery journey with us. We want it to feel great for her. We want her to walk out at the end of the process feeling more at home in her own body than she ever felt before. And that is so far from these unrealistic beauty standards that I don't know, it's hard to reconcile.
I couldn't agree with you more, because I actually remember, like, way back, remember when Kim x-rayed her bottom?
Oh
At
yeah.
that point, people didn't really know much about fat transfer at that
Right.
point. And so, she was knowingly doing that, lying to people, and felt totally fine about it, clearly, right?
Right. Right.
and a lot of what they do is to sell products, right? That they push.
Right.
And so how are you being role models and being and like and you are when you're in the public eye, you make the choice, I'm going to be a role model or not. And like in
Right.
that case, they're pretending that they're being something that they're not. And it's putting a lot of people through a lot of unnecessary feelings about themselves because,
Right.
well, they didn't need to do anything to get there. Well, no, clearly they have. And
Right.
it's even worse now that they cop to some of it and not like, oh no, I've never done this, but I've done this. Well,
Yeah.
no, come on, I have eyes that can see the rhinoplasty.
Well,
It's just,
and then the Ozempic and the massive weight loss and not copping to, to being on weight loss drugs. And you and I are both plastic surgeons. I don't have any problem with you doing whatever it is that you want to do for your body, but just just admit it, like just be honest about it. At least you don't have to give full transparency, but you do have to say that I have done some things to make my body look like this. This is not my natural body. I kind of think you owe that to the public.
well, what's interesting is I feel like in some other countries, they are very much like that. For example, in Brazil, right, getting plastic surgery
Oh,
is pretty normal. In fact,
normal.
you're happy to
Yeah.
be like, oh, yeah, I got these done. I got this. And I think it's a really healthy way to be. And I know
Yes.
some people will look at it and be like, oh, they get too much. Well, they're just being honest. Like,
Right.
I think it's super healthy that they're just like, yeah, I wanted to do something and change myself to make myself feel good. And I
Yeah.
did.
Yeah. 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 For sure. Exactly. Like you said, at least they're being honest about it.
So, what would you say are some of the most common procedures that you perform on women?
So I have a very niche practice. I really only do mommy surgery. So I do breast, belly, lipo, and
Okay.
labiaplasty, and that's it. That's all I do.
So no facial surgery, pretty much body. Okay.
Just those three things. Yeah, four things. And that sort of evolved over time. As with all of our practices. For the first 5 years of my practice, I did a ton of breast reconstruction. That's when I was doing more microsurgery, more of what was related to my fellowship. And when I started this practice, actually the reason that I stopped doing breast reconstruction was not my own. I mean, like many physicians, when I left my practice, I had a non-compete. So I was contractually prevented from doing breast reconstruction for several years after I started my practice. And when that was during that time period, what my practice ended up evolving into was a lot more breast, belly, lipo, mommy surgery. And when my non-compete expired, for me to go back into doing breast reconstruction would have totally disrupted the practice that I had already built. And I really enjoy it. I mean, I'm 44. I have two girls who are 13 and 10. So I'm kind of right in that window with my patients. Most of my patients are between like 30 and 55. So I'm kind of right there with them, and that makes it fun. I mean, that's what I was saying before. Like my clinic is fun. I like seeing these patients. I like the patients. I think they like me. And the journey becomes like so much more enjoyable for both of us, for all of us, because we are in the same phase of life, and I kind of understand their struggles. So a lot of what I talk about in the consultation, we talk about the surgery for sure, but I have like a 5-minute spiel on like what kind of childcare you're going to need after surgery, who's going to need to do what, how long it's going to be till you can drive carpool again, how long it's going to be till you can give a bath again, like these really specific things that moms have to do and think about, because having been there, I relate to them. So yes, I know I just do mommy surgery. I operate Tuesdays and Wednesdays. I typically do one full mommy makeover surgery Tuesday, one full one Wednesday, and then maybe an additional breast reduction, augmentation, tummy tuck, something like that.
So are all of your patients mothers, or are you doing some of these surgeries on women who have some of the changes that you might see with, having children, but didn't necessarily have kids?
Yeah, I mean, I would say probably 80% of my patients are moms and are doing like post-pregnancy body contouring, but I have seen a rise, I would say in the last year, I've seen more menopause makeovers. So I've seen more women who
Menopause.
are, and I saw that on somebody else's social. I was like, yes, I'm seeing this too. More women in their 50s and 60s who sometimes they had surgery, like they had their tummy tuck and their breast implants when they were 30 and or whenever they finished having kids. And then now when they've gone through perimenopause and menopause, you know how it goes, things shift and fat moves, and your body's not the same as it was. And so I'm doing a lot of those now. So I'm seeing women who I'm replacing implants, I'm taking implants out and doing lifts, I'm doing, revision tummy tucks, a little more lipo, that kind of thing. So that population is definitely rising.
Yeah, I've seen that as well. And I think you make a good point here, too, as well, is that just because you've had some sort of body contouring, breast surgery, plastic surgery, doesn't mean that you might not want to have some more later in life, because our bodies aren't static and they change
Right.
and we
Yeah.
age. And,
Yeah.
some of us put weight on, some of us lose weight as we get older. So
Right.
just knowing that, like, yes, your results look great for certain periods of time as long as you maintain, but there's still going to be times where you might want to do more later.
Right. Right. And the thing I like about inviting um, that into my practice and doing like a little bit more of that is that I really love that my practice can age with me. Because like I said, like I feel so connected to the population that I take care of. And I love the idea that like, okay, well now in 5 or 10 years, like that'll be me and that'll be my next, and then maybe I'll take care of more of those women. So that
Yeah.
part's fun too.
And I think that's one of my favorite parts about plastic surgery is, unlike some other surgical specialties, we really do have longevity with our patients when we want it.
Yeah.
Because I've taken care of like moms and daughters and
Yeah.
family members,
Fresh
and
Russians.
it's like,
Yeah.
it's nice because you build really nice relationships, and I don't think every surgical specialty gets that.
Yeah, there's definitely more of like a one and done. If you're taking out a gallbladder, then you take out the gallbladder, you never see the patient again. But our patients, if they're coming in for surgery, then they might come back for non-surgical stuff, for injectables, and they come with the practice, and then they become part of the practice family, and they, a lot of times they stick with us. Every year in May, we have a party. We have this thing that we call the Boutique Bash, where I'll invite a bunch of, it's kind of like a really fun ladies' night, like a bunch of old patients, a bunch of friends of the practice, a bunch of friends of mine. And we throw this big party at the Fairmont, which is our hotel partner for our overnight. After patients have surgery, they can stay at the Fairmont. It's right across the street. And we throw this great big party and patients come. And one of the things that's been really fun for me is there was a time when you would have maybe been embarrassed about that. Like you maybe wouldn't have wanted to talk about the fact that you're like going to your plastic surgeon's party. But now it's such a community and it's such a fun community that people are happy to come. They come like year after year, and we'll have like 150 women and we'll just like have a great girls' night.
That is so awesome. It sounds like you've really built a beautiful practice, and like not just a practice, but a community.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing us today. And I mean, like I said, it just sounds like you built a really beautiful place. If any of our listeners wanted to find you, what would be the best way for them to find you?
So I'm most active on Instagram at DC Plastic Surgery Boutique. We have had to, like many people, shift our surgical results off of that main page because Instagram, as you know, had such a major crackdown on showing any kind of nudity, even if it's covered nudity, which has been a real problem because if you are a body plastic surgeon, that's everything
all
you have.
yeah.
That's all you got. So we moved that one to an Instagram account called Boutique Surgery Results, which you can get from that first one. But DC Plastic Surgery Boutique is where I am. And I'm pretty active in the stories, and that is another fun thing about social media is that patients can kind of get to know you, your life, your person. And I know you do the same thing. You have a super active social media as well. But yeah, that's where I am.
Well, thank you so much. You guys definitely start following her and check her out. She does beautiful work. And it's just fun to see like how everybody does everything differently, even in different parts of the country.
Yeah.
So if you're in DC, you know who you need to go see.
And if you come to DC, come and visit me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being on the show.
My
and
pleasure.
Thank you all so much for listening to this episode of The Confidence Doc.
As we wrap up another episode of The Confidence Doc, I want to extend our heartfelt thank you for being a part of our community. If today's conversation resonated with you, remember that Dr. Rednam and her team are here to support you on your journey to self-confidence and beauty. Your story is unique, and it's our privilege to help you create the masterpiece that is your life.